Are you smarter than your technology? I think it's actually a key question for our generation, and I'm going to tackle it head on. Are you smarter than your technology? Probably not. And if so, not for long. Thank you very much. So Nick's telling me to stretch this out a little bit. I do have an appendix with some supporting slides. It'd be helpful to understand kind of how I'm approaching this problem. I'm a technologist, and for the last 25 years, I get paid to help many of the world's most advanced companies and organizations strategize, develop, adopt, and commercialize new technology. But several years ago, I, like many of you probably, began to notice that these new technologies are changing the way that we live. So I set out to study the cumulative effect of technology on us, particularly in how we think. And I've had a chance over the last few years to work with experts from dozens of fields from all over the world, and they're all smarter than I am. This work will be published in a series of books that looks at how technology has and will affect us. Tonight's appendix has a few insights from that. Let's start with some basics. Technology has made us smarter. Over the last 100 years, IQ has gone up as much as 30 points. And that's been enabled by technology advances in things like education, healthcare, the kind of information we process. And many of you are probably aware of Moore's law, the fact that computer processing doubles about every 18 months. And if you extrapolate that into the future, most of the technologists that I know are surprised at how fast technology is accelerating because we understand Moore's law. But it's not just Moore's law. It's advances not in computer hardware, but also in software called Nathan's law, and advances in Metcalfe's law, which are network effects, and then advances in the data, the total volume of human knowledge. These data centers around us here in Northern Virginia are not empty. They're full of data that informs real-time predictive world that we live in. And then another factor influencing how fast technology is advanced is revolutions in computer architecture. You're all probably familiar with cloud architecture. Well, that's migrating to hyperscale, and what's after that? All of these forces have worked together to create an astronomical advance in the pace of technology. Now, I'm an optimist. I think cognition is going to follow. So this is a happy story. This is a positive story. But the thing is the forces that govern technology in the past, social, business, and political, are going to struggle to keep up. Now, one shot, one opportunity. This has never happened before in human history, where technology surpasses humans' ability to think. I think we're there now. And I think as we look at the technology, what it's going to be governed by, you have to ask yourself, what's the plan? What's the roadmap? And when I say smarter in technology, these are vague, ambiguous terms, and depending on your specialty, they mean different things to you. So let's start first with technology. Let's start with something ubiquitous. iPhone. This is an iPhone 10. They're pretty common. Anybody here have one? Yeah, they're pretty common. This one's my daughter's. I borrowed it, and I promise I'll get it right back. You've probably been told that this thing has more computer processing than the Apollo space mission. It has more computer processing power than the entire world had during the moon landings in 1968. Maybe more importantly, this thing has more computer processing than the best supercomputer on the world in 1996, just 22 years ago. So what about today's supercomputer? The best one in the world today is in China. It's over $250 million to build recently. It's huge. That thing works about as fast as a couple 100,000 iPhones working together. It's amazing. And the human brain crushes the supercomputer. One estimate puts it at 10 times the processing power of the world's best supercomputer. But Moore's law, just using that, in 18 months, that will be twice as powerful. And again, until by November 2023, there will be a supercomputer on the world that is as smart as the average human. And the next year, it'll be even faster. So what about common phones, common technology? If you use the past as prologue here, 22 years after that, the phone in your pocket will be as smart as you are. And the next year, it'll be 50% smarter than you. These are real numbers. I think that they're actually conservative. But technology is not just a single piece of hardware. The strength of today's technology is that it's a system, a network of networks. It all works together. How do we compare that technology as a whole in the real world to us today? It's really hard. And experts are going to quibble with things. But it's like kind of comparing a dog and a calculator. They do different things. But let's simplify it. IBM Watson, journal articles that come out saying Watson can predict and diagnose serious medical conditions faster, in seconds, more accurately than human experts do in weeks. Technology, people. This came out just last month in Mary Meeker's Internet Reports. Google Voice for the first time has surpassed 95% accuracy, which is the human accuracy rate for listening to another person and understanding that. It's the first time in history. Or more simply, most of us can relate to, we're all more likely to listen to our GPS giving directions than our spouse. So, technology is a system compared to the brain. Now, we've heard this story before. Any expert you talk to will start talking about how we have these overblown stories about how technology will replace all jobs, and it's never happened. Or maybe we've heard wolf too many times. They'll talk about how farming was 90% of the jobs decades ago, and now it's 2%, or most of the telephone operator jobs are gone, or many of the manufacturing jobs, 25% to 11% recently in the last few decades. And yet, we're at an all-time unemployment rate, and real wages are rising. This is a great big myth that technology is going to replace us. So I'm probably wrong, but I think this time is different. I think we are going to be replaced by technology, and of course there's going to be new jobs. That's the argument. But the jobs in which a person can do better, cheaper than technology are going to be fewer and fewer. The reason we have rising real-world wages today is not that they're rising for everybody, they're rising for a select few skilled people. Unskilled workers are still kind of treading along. In the future, we all might be unskilled workers. What does that mean for us, for the way we live, for how we're going to have to think, the kind of jobs we're going to do? That brings us back to the question, are we smarter than our technology? So I think a related question is what would you do today at this one point in time that's very unique if you knew this? I think that the solution is to adapt the mind to work with smarter technologies to leave humanity better off. Sometimes people say, oh, you're trying to dictate what technology is good for people and what it's not. No, it's up to people to decide for themselves. But in general, if you ask people what they want out of life, you get some common answers. They want good health, safety, relative welfare. And the opposite of that is kind of our experience with technology today. But let me talk about the experience with technology today for just a second. How is the world today? If you look at the numbers, mortality of child, infant, adult has plummeted. Adult life expectancy, stable throughout thousands of years of human existence, has doubled in just the last century. We've cured polio, typhoid, serious illnesses that were words that struck terror in the heart of our grandparents. Technology has done so much for us. And yet, violent crime has declined. By any measure, I believe this is the best time ever to be on this planet. Maybe we've got this thing figured out. Maybe technology has really worked out well for us. But I have this weird habit at parties, and I'm sorry if I've done this to any of you, saying, do you think the world is better now than it was 25, 50, or 100 years ago? And this is just anecdotal, but you know what people tell me? It's worse. And the younger the person I talk to, the stronger they feel. How can this be? The flip side of the coin of the previous slide was that while life is really good, the information we get about the world is inaccurate. 5 hours a day of television, and what are we seeing? We're seeing breaking news about gang rapes and school shootings and sexual harassment. But I don't care if it happened in India, it shows up as breaking news immediately to us in real time. We're overwhelmed with the bad stories in real time. In the meantime, we're overlooking all the good things that happen to us every day around us. We don't see that. So when we turn from TV news to fiction for entertainment, the storylines bleed over, so you can't tell them apart. The picture we get of the world is that it's a dark, dangerous, and conflicted place. No wonder, despite the fact that this is the best time for us to be alive, that 75% of American men are overweight or obese. Cue sucking in my belly. And most women too. And we have lifestyle diseases that we all know about, right? Diabetes and high blood pressure. These are serious consequences. Best time to be alive. The way we look at the world causes us to get stressed. So we relieve that stress by going to social media 2 hours a day, where you learn that your life is not as good as everybody else's. And coincident with that is rising rates of mental illnesses and depression and other problems. The problem is we've got these two conflicting pictures and no one's putting the picture together. Why not? I Googled, are you smarter than your technology as a preparation for this? You know how many hits I found on the big internet? 4. Quoted term, it was a quoted term, are you smarter than your technology? But as a quoted term, I searched for Kim Kardashian's butt. Any guesses? 100,000. 100,000. Why are experts not looking at this big picture? Because it's so darn complex. These days, in our jobs as skilled workers, we're not rewarded for solving big, broad, complex problems. We're rewarded for going deep on a specific facet, for talking about how texting while driving is bad for you, or talking about screen time or dopamine. This isn't about humane technology. This is about the big picture. The very fabric of human thought is changing, and I don't believe that this is being talked about. So what I think we need is a roadmap. My simple view of this is this chart right here, where on the one side you have indiscriminate technology use, and on the left side you have intentional technology consumption, and leaving us better off at the top, worse off at the bottom. I think today we're all digital gluttons. We consume a bunch of technology without really a plan, and it kind of leaves us worse off. And that's okay. This is all new. We're trying to figure it out. We can't be blamed for that. Along the way, by the way, I acknowledge that there's some people who are what I would call accidental innovators. There's no common roadmap for how to use technology. We know what to eat. We know what different foods do to our body, even if we choose not to do them. Cue sucking in my belly again. But at least there's a roadmap there. On technology, there's not. So we all know some people who are doing different things that's working out pretty good for them. They're not depressed, they're not overweight, they're using technology, they're accidental innovators, but that plan isn't broadly prescribed. What is broadly prescribed, if you talk to the experts who talk about dopamine and screen time and unplugging and wellness 2.0, is just that, unplug. That's the answer. Yoga, sleep better, eat better, exercise. And they're right, that makes a lot of sense. I know a group of people that do that, and they're what I call digital Spartans. They don't do social media, they don't do television, they don't get any of my Caddyshack jokes. This group I'm thinking of, specifically by name, they all have PhDs, a couple of them multiple, and they do complex, deep work. Digital Spartans. But I think they're missing out. How can having a supercomputer in your back pocket, all that technology I was talking about, not help you doing complex, deep work? So I don't think unplugging is the answer. I just think that it's a solution that mitigates some of the problems associated with indiscriminate technology use. What I think the solution will be is being intentional consumers. I think that there'll be emergent behaviors that we all adopt in the future that allow that cognition curve to go up. But we're missing that roadmap. Now, I'm not a Pollyanna here. I know that even if we have that, there's going to be people who decide to be digital gluttons. Fine. I just want them to have a chance to know what's good for them and not. And I think that we're also going to have some roadkill along the way. That's just the nature of major transitions, and this is about as big a change as we've ever had in human history. So this is my simple view, but I'm not thinking about hacking your brain. I'm kind of tired of people talking about hacking your brain. Hacking is what you do to something that's complex that you don't control and pretty much don't understand. It's when you go into your car and you hack it to get better gas mileage. You may get better gas mileage, but you may cause a lot of other problems. I hacked you guys, or certainly the 12 people who will see this on YouTube, when I called this the world's shortest TED Talk. Hacking is not the answer. We control the brains. We may not understand them right now. Different people understand different facets, but we're not talking about hacking the brain. I think that that's a short-term solution. That's like being on a railway platform and jumping onto a moving train. What we really need is something comprehensive, proactive, that speeds us up to get onto that train. Hacking, I understand sleeping and yoga and hacking the brain, that'll get us by. I get it. This is hard, confusing stuff. I go upstairs at 9:30 every night. My daughters are doing homework. And they're doing homework. Music is playing. They've got FaceTime. I call the applications the wrong things, like MySpace, so maybe it's not even FaceTime, but they're video conferencing with their friends, video chatting with their friends, and playing Fortnite. I think I understand this stuff. I know all the literature on screen time, dopamine, multitasking, and I know that this isn't good for them. I know if my parent ever saw me that, kick my ass. Turn off the TV, go downstairs, do your homework, and then go to bed. I could not do the work I'm doing now if I grew up the way they did now. But what if the world that they're going to grow up in is going to require a different brain than the one that I have? I'm not saying that that's the case, but my professional experience leads me to believe that it is. What if the experience that they're doing right now is exactly the kind of immersive technology experience that's going to allow them to be successful in the future? The problem is we don't know. And that's not good enough for me. That's not enough for me to go upstairs and say, turn that off, go downstairs, do these things, because I don't know. I've been studying this for 3 years. I don't think that that's the right plan to tell them to turn it off. Unfortunately, we're just going to have to see how the movie ends. Here's a framework to understand this in a big picture. 300 years ago, the key to influence was land. 100 years ago, the key to influence and power was money, with which you could buy land, factories, tools, and employ people. I think that in the very near future, the key to power will be the ability to interact effectively with technology. I don't think we're there yet, as judged by how I think we're doing in terms of our smartness with technology. I think that that's what's coming soon, and that's good news. This is not a bad news story. The climate's going to change and we're all going to die unless we do something dramatic. This is an opportunity to harness all this technology. So this is a good news story. So what? A bunch of us are working together to create a consortium of experts from these different disciplines to work together, and that's what's needed. You need people who speak different languages looking at the problem. But you don't need a bunch of experts someplace to put together a roadmap and ship it down to you. You're smart, I think. You're here, you're not watching television, or maybe you're watching this on television. Pay attention to what you pay attention to. Begin to think about what you're going to need to do in the future. Begin to think about how you interact with technology and how that may prepare you for that future. So that's my challenge to you. Go home, ask these questions, think about it, and then take an extra step. Share what you think. Put a YouTube on, video up, or share it on social media. But begin the conversation. Challenge those people around you at work, at home. Because I think that this is a really pressing question. And so I ask you guys, are you smarter than your technology? What do you think?